Welcome to Check for Traps. This week we're talking about The Old Man and the Gun, a film about Robert Redford who plays a bank robber, and not, as we were all led to believe, the joint biopic of Gary Oldman and James Gunn.
Alright, so The Old Man and the Gun. Robert Redford plays an elderly bank robber who's spent his entire life in a cycle of theft, capture, and prison escape. And Ben Affleck... It's not fucking Ben Affleck though, is it? It's
No.
Casey Affleck.
The other Affleck. The infinitely less talented and successful.
Casey Affleck is an aging police officer and family man looking for a case to placate his midlife crisis.
Just the description of Casey Affleck's character could be like 50 different detectives,
Yeah.
and each one would have been better.
Detective McMurphy McIrish. Actually, yeah, they may as well have gone full hog and had him do like the thick Boston accent, because it was pretty obvious, wasn't it, what was going on with him?
We made several jokes throughout this film, because we watched it together. We do not watch every film together, contrary to popular belief.
No, that's right. We're not always cradling each other.
No, only mostly.
Most of the time, and then there's the sad times when we're apart.
But yeah, we turned to one another several times throughout this film and said like placeholder dialogue.
Yeah.
And I feel to begin with, I said that I just think his name John Hunt was a placeholder name, but I feel like he might have been a placeholder character.
Yep.
Like maybe the guy was like, he was like add more interesting character later, and then they're just like, oh, I really like this. It's very simple, and they're like, yeah, it is really simple. It's like, fuck, I can't believe I did that. He's like, oh my god.
Yeah, man, and the fucking problem, I mean, an example of, I think, one of the first times we said that was when they were doing the cop on the case montage, and there was a bit where the sort of senior cop said to, Casey / Ben Affleck and his buddy, like, so what are we going to do? And he was like, we're going to catch them. It's just like, well, fucking course you are, you're police officers.
Yeah, it's like,
what did you think the answer to that question was going to be? We're going to bake them a birthday cake.
Yeah, it's
we're
like,
going to make love to them.
We're going to give up. Oh, cool! That's amazing. Well, does that mean we can just go to the pub? Does that mean we can go bowling?
Shit-faced, man.
There's another one with his wife where she's like, you know what you're going to do? You're going to catch them until they're caught or something, I think she says.
Yeah,
she said something that really jarred me.
Or it's like, well, you're not going to quit.
That was it.
And this is the thing, I mean, we're not nailing it down, but it was because it was so...
generic.
Yeah, I had really high expectations for this film, and we'll go into how I actually feel about it later, but there were times where, so the director, he wrote it as well, Lowry, he did a ghost story, but there were parts of it where, the dialogue, and this was the problem with all of it, to be honest, like, dialogue was charming enough, or the actions without words were deft enough, that it just made the areas of the film where things were really lacking, like the ones we've said, be all the more unforgivable, because he demonstrated within the film that he could do better, way better. And then sometimes it was like, why did you phone it in so hard?
Yeah, well, I mean, it almost felt as if there was like two, like sort of like an A plot and a B plot. Like one took up 2/3 of the film, and that was the old man.
Yep.
And then, a third of the film was just this very generic, tired-looking police officer. But not like tired in a profound way, not like No Country for Old Men. He's not like philosophically reflecting on the world around him.
You're absolutely right. There was no context to why he was so tired with the job, other than just received wisdom. He's a cop, and every time I clean up this mess, it makes itself again.
And he's 40? That was like that's how they introduce him to us.
Yeah.
Is that he's 40, and they say it's all downhill from here.
That's right.
Which obviously, I guess, is supposed to be quite a funny counterpoint to the fact a man in his 70s is really having a great time.
And I think that Lowry thought that. I think he thought that he was very clever, because he was like, aha, it's all downhill from here, and then he starts calling the gang that he's pursuing the Over the Hill gang, and it's almost, he seemed to think that was enough to create a thematic link, but for me, I was just like, so does he dislike them because they're happy? You can see him getting exasperated in the interviews with the witnesses. It's just they keep saying he was really happy and he was really charming, and he just gets more and more exasperated, but does he see something...
Is he jealous? Because it's not developed enough, and it could have been really interesting.
Exactly.
And he could have. I would have loved a bit after he's caught the guy, or after he's met him and caught him, where he's just like, you know what, being 40 ain't too bad, or something like that. Like if it could give him a newfound appreciation for life,
I completely agree.
That would be pretty great. But we don't get that. In fact, if I recall correctly, their sort of like closing line is not really anything to do with the main theme.
No,
it's just him being content, but not content with anything that's happened.
No.
Just general contentment.
We know exactly, I'm just going to say it, we know exactly what the relationship and the arc was supposed to be between those two. Mm-hmm. But just the fact that we know from seeing movies like this before, what it was supposed to be, that doesn't mean they get to phone it in, and they did phone it in.
They
and
did.
It was irritating because they're both. I quite like Casey Affleck in some things. It's obviously Robert Redford.
Isn't he a sex pervert? Isn't Casey? Yeah, we're
Oh,
not
yeah,
allowed to like Casey Affleck anymore.
Absolutely. Well, you are correct, and I like him even more.
Okay, good. I think I like him. Again, I did, as Josh will attest to this, it wasn't until the end of the film that I learned that was Casey Affleck. Up until then, I'd only had a suspicion that it was.
So, as we covered in the last one, Aaron can't tell people apart by their faces, and this was even weirder because when Tom Waits was first on screen in this movie, we were both laughing because I was obviously like, he's such a presence, it's ridiculous, that's Tom Waits in a bank, and I'm looking to Aaron and he's sniggering back at me, and then later he's like, didn't even realise it was Tom Waits.
I said I thought,
what the fuck were you laughing at?
I was laughing because I thought it might be, but I honestly couldn't tell, and I couldn't ask you because you were already laughing.
Fair enough.
And so I was just like, man, I sure hope that's Tom Waits.
Yeah.
Because again,
you feel pretty dumb if that's not Tom Waits.
So I think this is the reason why I have to read about films before I go into them, because otherwise I'm just, I can't see the wood from the trees.
Completely.
Like, I'd have seen that guy to be like, oh my god, is that George Galloway?
It's amazing that you ended up being a cinephile.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
I don't...
You burn a lot of fuel with this, don't you?
I tell you what, if it wasn't for the internet, if I had been a cinephile in the 70s, I don't think I could have done it, because the information wouldn't have been readily to hand.
No.
I would constantly be phoning those, sort of like encyclopedic helplines.
Yeah.
Sort of like, excuse me, operator, was Tom Waits in Paradise Alley? I just need to know.
You're in the library, they're just like, Mr. Chapman, the library's closing in 5 minutes. Looking through old indexes.
I'm like, who was the Godfather?
Are you solving a case? No, I'm becoming a cinephile.
It would have been absolutely horrible. But yeah, to tell you who I did recognise instantly though, Danny Glover, and it's because we saw him recently. Then again, I saw Tom Waits recently as well. I got no excuse.
We saw both of those guys recently.
And I think that's pretty good. Like, lead in Tom Waits, Danny Glover, Robert Redford, the three most endearing presences in this film.
That's right.
I'm sad that those two weren't on more. Perhaps cut the entire cop thing and just have the interplay between the three of those.
Well,
I'm very happy.
Tom Waits didn't even end up with a resolution, which was a shame because Tom Waits was categorically the most charming of the three. Like he was clearly the wild card of the group.
Yeah, he had a nice story. He wanted more. Like, he's the one pushing for the bigger heists.
That's right. There was a scene earlier on in the film where, just to add flavour, and it worked really well, they cut to those three in a bar post-heist and he was just telling a story from his childhood.
That was really nice.
Anyone could have edited it out, but it stayed in, and it should have stayed in, but we also should have had more because it was good.
I liked it when the three of them were just being old men, and they were talking like old men talk.
That's
like,
right.
Having, I almost regret that I don't get to see more old men talk. I know that sounds weird, but I just love the way that they, sort of like a wistful timelessness, generally. Obviously not all old people, some old people are fucking nuts, but like, when I see people like my granddad talking, I'm always like, oh, it's such a charming way, and it really captured that. And again, the film actually even goes into how, like, the young can't really know what the old feel like, but it managed to capture what I believed the essence of being old was, just in terms of, like, the tone and the actions and even the music. I think and that's why I think with both of us, we both said that we were looking back on this film after we'd seen it fondly, despite the fact we didn't like quite a lot of it. And I think that's part of the reason, is it's sort of a bit like someone once said about Studio Ghibli films, they can make you nostalgic for something you never have actually been through. And I think that's what this does. And in a way that very few things do. It made me nostalgic for being old, an experience I categorically have never felt.
And I mean, because we're taking the piss, but I'm actually getting chills thinking about it because, we've spoken a little bit about representation, and I want to see movies about things that I'm not. That should be the whole point. And this is a movie about elderly bank robbers, and that's fantastic. Because it's not something I will definitely become one of those things. I don't know about the other. But it did make me feel like I identified with them despite the fact that it wasn't possible. But again, like, this feeling was outmatched by all of the other things that were wrong with it.
Really
and it
poor
just served
choices.
to really frustrate me at certain points.
It was sort of, I'm just trying to, there was like this beautiful folk-esque story about an old man not even paving his way, because he's not trying to pave a way, he's just trying to like while away the time doing something he enjoys. He doesn't have an aim, he just throws all his money in a little hole gets really happy whenever there's a reason to use it, which only comes up once in this film, but I really liked it because he was infused that he could finally help someone. But then the other bit is just so pointless, like genuine, and like in an upsetting way. Like I you assemble such talent and you assemble such a tone, and you just, every 15 minutes you'd squander it with another cutback to just this completely colour by numbers cop
It was ridiculous.
montage.
Yeah, so picking up on one of the things you said about how he just does these things. So with the character of Forrest, Robert Redford, I did like it most of the time. I was having trouble, and this was only made more difficult by the ending. I was kind of trying to work out whether or not, and I am going to get super pretentious here, so was he a hero of the absurd, or was he actually a victim of it? Like, his cycle, I couldn't tell. It seemed like they were going for that being something he loved doing, and when people talk to him about death in earlier parts of the film, he is flippant about it in a way that I couldn't be sure if he was in denial about it, or if he had just really transcended his fear of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really got an answer to that. It wasn't, so he lives in a house that faces a graveyard, and it was a bit on the nose. They didn't have to have this line of dialogue again, but Tom Waits walking out was like, hey, I never thought to ask you, but why do you live in front of this graveyard? Is it some kind of really obvious, like, poke in the direction of the themes? And he's like, I never thought about it. It's like, does he actually never think about it?
Again, I think you could have easily made that such a, you have the three of them drinking on the porch. He's just like, do you know anyone buried in that graveyard? Nah.
Yeah. No.
Like, that's it. You just need to reference the fact it's there. You don't, like, it was pulling us by the hand in places where the film just hadn't done that previously, or had done, but never in those scenes.
Just felt awkward.
Yeah, it did. It felt really, no one would actually ask that. Like, it was...
Especially not when you're on the way out the door having done a bank robbery. You'd be like, oh, graveyard. I must ask that about him at a different time.
Yeah.
I want to go home.
A more fitting time. I'm real tired.
So we will probably get into this more later, but the thing is with what I perceived to be the first ending of the film, which I was liking a lot, it seemed like he had made his choice and he had to be this way, and he was kind of going to go out stubbornly. But
he was going to go out on his high horse.
Yeah, quite literally, exactly. But then, because the movie carried on and kind of whittled away the heroism of it, and then so the problem is it did the same ending twice, and it was that he couldn't change, but one of them was kind of bittersweet and the other one was just bitter. The second one, it was just sad, like he seemed like the victim of his own process, which I didn't feel was fleshed out enough or had been what they were really going for earlier in the film.
Yeah.
But the first one, when he is injured and he climbs on that horse because he thinks he's going to die, that was so beautiful and legitimately poetic. And then they really dashed that, which is what soured me to the film so much.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just for some context, early on he meets a farmer. Like, well, she's not quite a farmer. She's a rancher, I guess. She owns like a big piece of ranch land.
Jewel the widow.
Yeah, and she has horses, and he says he's never rode horses because I guess he's spent too long coming in and out of prison.
That's right.
And he says it's on his sort of like bucket list, though he never actually uses that term.
No, he conspicuously says it's on my list of things to do that I haven't done yet.
Yeah, because he doesn't acknowledge death, and she says you better do it quickly, and he can't think as to a reason why he needs to do it particularly quickly. And I agree, because he doesn't, for reasons we'll get into later, time doesn't seem to really affect him.
Oh man.
But anyway, so he then like Josh said, there was a beautiful moment where he's been shot, he gets on the horse, and he just rides around the field for a bit while the police arrived. And what I thought was going to happen is I thought it was going to end with the police going by and us not knowing whether they were coming for him or not, because there was a bit of a vagueness there. I didn't know whether they were just passing down the road on the chase for him or whether they... But yeah, and then it has a second, much worse ending, and we're going to try and like rearrange this so it runs a little better, because I think there's a bunch of things you could do. But the second ending, I mean, it tries to paint it as not being bitter, because it says that he was smiling, doesn't it? It goes like, then they arrested him, so he basically gets out, he commits more crimes. There's like a bit of a half-hearted attempt to show him being happy with the rancher woman. Yeah. And then he just does more crimes.
Very important to note, by the way. So, okay, well, the first problem is he goes to jail, and it's like, okay, how big of a deal is this? And the film should have told you that. It told you so much stuff you didn't need to be told, but it doesn't say how long he was in jail for.
Just a court scene, just saying like, Forrest Tucker for the crime of fucking loads of shit.
It raises too many questions, because he appears to be in prison for 0 time. What happened in real life was he was in prison for that last term for 10 years. I'm going to assume, and the movie could have easily had a scene saying, look, you're old, you have escaped from prison 16 times, but you have to put a lampshade on it. You have to acknowledge that it's weird that he wouldn't have already had like 16 life sentences, considering he's been done for armed robbery. I mean, even the existing literature about the real man was not clear as to why it was so
No,
lenient on him.
I tried to look into this most like for a good portion of today and just gave up. Given what my knowledge of the American judicial system, there is no reason that he should have been.
Yeah.
Unless they like really played up his deeds, then I can't think of. Or maybe it's state by. I know there's like a weird thing state by state that you can't be processed for crimes you did in other states.
Oh, okay.
So maybe the state that got him, there just wasn't enough. But again, no one's telling me this.
Again, yeah, so regardless, it is not clear how long he was in jail for.
The film should have at least come up with something.
Yeah, yeah, it's just, well, I mean, they kept having little title cards at the bottom saying what year it was, so it's like, okay, what you need to do here to establish why him getting out and doing this thing again, or why it's even bad that he's gone to jail in the first place, is tell him how long it's happening for. That is so basic. He gets out, he looks exactly the same. They could have just dyed his hair.
Yep.
He goes back to the house with her. They make a point, incidentally, of saying that they're going to have different bedrooms, and I know that he was actually married to that woman in real life before he went in.
Oh.
So obviously they're not practicing fidelity to the real story, which we'll get more into later.
That's weird.
Yeah, because I felt like they were saying that he'd almost been castrated by the situation.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Like he was no longer attractive to her because he'd been in prison, sort of thing. Yeah, he didn't have his power. He'd lost his like charm.
Yeah, and in his attempts to immerse himself in civilian life, it had actually kind of taken away what gave him personality.
Yeah.
But strange thing to do, he makes a phone call in a very boring shot to the detective, who I don't really need to. I don't really feel that they have much of a connection.
Nope.
They tried to push that Casey Affleck had a realization that he was glad that he hadn't been the one to slap the cuffs on him, but this wasn't earned. It wasn't earned at all.
Not at all.
Again, I know what they were trying to do. 3 drafts down the line, that would have been great, but I didn't come here to make your movie for you while I'm fucking watching it. And then he goes and he walks, again, in a very boring shot, into a bank. It says he committed 6 more robberies that day. And it's like, guys, this exact same conclusion was reached in such a beautiful scene earlier that was so good. I was thinking as I was sat there and the police were chasing him and he decided that, he's going to get on that horse, he has his hat on. I was like, anything that was wrong with this before I'm going to forgive, because it's really pulled together so well. And there's so much pathos here. Blues are on the ground.
It was heavy. It was actually.
It was heavy.
It was the feeling was palpable and completely squandered.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Squandered. You fucking idiots.
But yeah, so should we get onto our rewrite? Because I think there's a bunch of things we can do with that like last 30-40 minutes.
Yeah.
One thing is they show a escape montage. And it's a good montage. It's a great montage. It's really funny.
Can I just jump in quick, actually? So I'll say the reason we feel that. So this is, supposedly based on a true story. The reason we feel that there was no need to actually go with, I guess, the real ending was that they had betrayed the facts earlier on to the point where if you're going to take liberties elsewhere, you've rearranged the story, rearrange it a bit more. Yep. So that's why we've decided to do this.
Indeed. And I think you can still, because they kept resorting to these like little flashcards, again, to sort of like, to pad it out, obviously if you've seen it, you know this, but they kept referring to these little like blue flashcards where they'd be like, the ones where she's, the woman, his wife, says, and you should stay there, and then it goes, and he did?
And he did, yeah.
And then there's another one, obviously there's the one you said where he's like, he robbed 4 more banks that day, and when they caught him, he was smiling.
Yeah,
and
this
so,
story is mostly true.
And you can easily, with what I think we're both going to propose, and I think we've got roughly the same idea, it'll be interesting to see where we differ. I think you can easily put one of those cards up after, if you really have to. I mean, I don't think you have to, but if you really wanted to, you could say that he would go in and out of jail one more time and would die in prison. Yeah. Like, that's fine. That if you really want to tell the story to its conclusion, something I don't think this needs, by the way.
No.
Like, we're focused on the old man and the gun. I don't want to know about, like, I don't need to know his demise. No. It doesn't add anything.
No. The important part of this story was over by the time they showed you that. We already knew that he was we could have already known that he was a permanent reoffender and that he couldn't change.
But again, like you said, that's never sort of like criticised as a fault of the system. That's purely down to him, and which again is quite a real problem in all arms of like incarceration across every country, not just America.
He didn't know how else to be.
Yeah. So the first big one, the first of maybe like 2 or 3, I think, is that we take the escape montage. There's like 16 escapes. He's escaped 16 times, and he hands her a piece of paper with all 16 of them.
That's right.
And there's a 17th one blank.
Incidentally, again, stupid dialogue. She says, "What's this?"
Well, it's obvious.
In a really dumb way. It's like, okay, how about this is a film. You have a camera. Cut to what's written at the top of the paper that says, I don't know, Bob's greatest breakouts. He does call himself Bob. But again, he's like, it's all the times I broke out. it's just annoying.
Yeah, no, I agree. You can let people put together. If the last 16 points have been breakouts, your audience will assume, and the character, the woman will reasonably assume that number 17 left blank would be this current breakout.
Yeah.
That's not a stretch. Speaking of stretches, actually, should we before we begin our little re-edit, can we talk about Lola?
Okay, so yeah, we definitely can talk about Lola in an already fucking barren character that is Casey Affleck,
John Hunt,
and with his fucking barren family that just serve only to confuse the viewer. His wife shows up at one point. I guess he's been drinking a beer, and at this point in the movie, they want to remind you that he actually loves his family, and he realizes that they're more important, and he's listening to a song on the radio, and he turns it up to dance with his wife, and then tell her, we're going to go out on the town tonight. And that song is Lola, and it's really weird that it's Lola, just because his wife is a black woman, and they put that song on, and it could have been any other song, but that song is about a black trans person, and it was just really, it threw us both off. I was like, is that what they're going to do?
And specifically dancing with a trans black person. Yeah, just, and then discovering that they are a man.
We're not wrong here.
No.
That was a weird thing. Everyone knows that that's what that song is about.
Leave your comments whether you thought that she was trans as well.
Yeah.
Because I thought that, because again, we only learnt this. We only learnt that we both had the same thought like a day after, and it was a real thank God I'm not crazy moment.
Yeah. Because I was like, should I bring it up? No, I shouldn't. But you know what? I fucking should. That was just a weird thing to do.
Yeah, and I will talk to everyone who I know who's seen this film and try to gauge whether that's a reaction. I think anyone who is glancingly familiar with that song had that reaction, and I thought it was going to be amazing. Yeah. I was honestly like, I can't wait until what a nice little midway twist is that this man is in a loving relationship with a transsexual black woman.
Well, yeah, just to be clear,
in the 80s.
Just to be clear, we weren't relieved when this wasn't the case.
No.
We would have been completely fine with
that. In fact,
that.
if anything, I was slightly disappointed.
Yeah, it was such a weird tease.
Yeah. It was so... And again, I can only assume it's just sort of tone deafness. Or, like you said, that they just needed a jaunty song.
Again, it could have been anything, though. Yeah, it's I guess, it would have been popular when they were slightly younger. Although, I'm not sure that much younger.
No.
This is set in... That scene was, I believe, in 81.
When were the Kinks? The
70s?
60s and the 70s?
60s and the 70s, yeah. So, he was 40. I mean...
I guess he could have been, in his, 30s. Maybe he looks back on that fondly.
That's dumb. They could have gone for anything.
Yeah.
You really got me now. But no, we went for the song that's explicitly about a black transsexual.
Yeah,
that is weird.
Do you reckon she's okay with that? How does she feel that he turns that up and starts dancing with her?
Yeah, it's what are you implying?
Yeah, exactly. She's like, oh, honey, what about this song? I was like, I actually like this song. He's like, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
I learn more about you every day, Casey.
Quick cut back to Royal Redford and I'm happy again. So we got,
we're fixing the old man and the gun.
So we walk out to David Lowery. We're like, we liked it.
Yeah.
We liked it a lot.
We actually
However, we think you might be a bit of an idiot.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe you've got a little cocky. You've had a couple of successes. You've just been hired to direct Peter Pan.
Yeah, you're excited about that because you're an idiot.
You're riding high.
You did Pete's Dragon. Morons were convinced that was actually good. I'm not going to give it the time of day because I'm not a twat.
What's Pete's Dragon?
Pete's Dragon was the Disney live-action remake of Pete's Dragon. Pete's Dragon, kind of like... I was about to say, Puff the Magic Dragon, before I remembered, that's a Peter, Paul and Mary song, and Pete's Dragon is a different thing.
I was going to say, I thought you might have meant Puff the Magic Dragon.
Yeah, no, it was just a thing, an old Disney thing, that I think it was a cartoon.
Oh, okay.
And he did Stacklasa and the Red Letter guys made a point of saying it was actually really good, and it showed that he could take on a blockbuster and doing it in an interesting way.
That's good. Well, at least, that's better than what I thought, which is I thought he'd only ever done, Ghost Story and... The Bodies.
And then Bodies Saints.
Yeah, I thought he'd only ever done smaller projects, and then they were like, try Peter Pan. A famously, you got to portray pirate ships in that and flying.
A completely unadaptable Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Do you remember all those good Peter Pan movies?
No.
Yeah, no.
Oh, yeah.
That's because they don't
That was
exist.
a trick question.
Ah, thank you.
You're a clever bastard.
Well done. Do you remember how Hook was really good? Get the fuck out.
Oh my god.
So yes, excuse me.
I love that.
We approached David Lowery.
So we approached David Lowery in the street.
Yeah.
I'm naked. I'm covered in the script that I've made.
right.
And I take off the groin bit, which is
Yep.
the most important bit, and I tell him to read it.
Yep.
He looks at me slightly disgustedly, and this is what I say.
Much like the old man with the gun, I say, I have a gun, and I kind of like you, David Lowery, so do what the naked man says.
He's like, be a champ about this.
There you go.
That is one thing. Sorry, just again, we will get there eventually. This isn't a deliberate tease. Whenever Robert Redford is on screen and actually robbing a bank, he is so charming. And I think this is sort of like, you know, I'm just trying to think of a band. Best I've got right now is Florence and the Machine. You'll probably be able to come up with a better one than me.
Okay.
Do you know when like the lead is so much more known and talented and great than every other member of the band?
Okay.
That felt like this.
Yeah.
It felt, and especially when I was watching those Casey Affleck scenes, I was like, when am I going to get back to Florence? Not that I even particularly like Florence and the Machine, but there must be a better.
Well, now
analogy.
I'm in such a Mark Corrigan situation that I literally cannot think of a different example.
Cool.
You've brain
You're gonna edit this where I say a better band.
All right, fair enough.
Than
Yeah,
Florence.
maybe I'll do that, but if I don't, it's because
Then leave this in, and I'll look like an idiot.
Yeah,
That's good.
and like right now, my brain is just full of a picture of you naked, covered in pages of the script, assailing David Lowery.
Talking about Florence and the Machine. The problem is you didn't have enough Florence.
Please, sir, I've maybe got kids.
So
Okay.
the escape sequence. We put that in there. As well as that, the other thing I want to put in there is all the stuff where he is struggling to adapt to civilian life.
Yeah.
So it's not too much of a stretch to say that he, for whatever reason, he stays with her and he does it, and he's like, he's trying to be normal, or his version of normal.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a scene where him and the elderly gang, the over the hill gang, sort of have a falling out, which might make more sense as to why Danny Glover's on the porch at the end as well.
Yeah.
I quite liked that. So you have those two. They're sort of like, they're going about their everyday life. He says, "I'm gonna go out for a minute," and then he does it.
Yeah.
And I think that really works well. And then you have the escape thing, and then you've still basically got it. I mean, it's probably like an hour and 20 minutes, but you just spend more time on Tom Waite. You spend 10 minutes of Tom Waite just talking.
Yeah.
And yeah, you end on that horse, but you have the build-up be so much more extreme. Like, maybe she realizes at one point that he's a bank robber.
Yeah.
She says, like, what will happen if you go to prison? At that point, he gives her the piece of paper.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
doesn't ask, what does this piece of paper mean? Because it's very obvious what it means. And then he goes through each of them and he says, and that's, well, I'll be fine. And it reinforces his confidence.
Yeah.
And it will make his fall even greater because suddenly he's wounded and you don't know if he dies or not. I would personally not have a blue little title card saying he died in prison.
No.
I would let people do their own research.
The way that when the police were tailing him for, the first ending, what we consider to be the superior ending, the way that the film really, really abruptly stopped being fun and charming and started being sad, because he'd always been in control of these crimes and he'd always been charming the pants off the people he was robbing. Not when this happened. It was a moment that brought him low and humbled him, because he got injured in the drive away, and then also
A car backfired. So there's a joke earlier about how a car backfired, and a car backfires again, and because a car backfires, police start shooting and he gets injured.
Yeah.
And then because of that, he fucks up and he smashes his car into another car. And so then he looks all like raggedy and pathetic, and he's just like pointing this gun.
He has to get into a car and take hostage the woman and her child who are in the car in order to get away. He's not charming the pants off her when that happens. She's scared, and that is not what happened up until that point. And it's like his belief about himself, what made the way he did his crimes fly for us, suddenly goes out the window, and suddenly he's just a scared old man, dude.
And it's good.
Who could have not ended up in this situation, but couldn't stop himself.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, this. Up until then, he's like, I do it because I love it, and it's like, you ain't loving it anymore.
No,
and
neither are these people.
Exactly, and it really works, and there's a very real consequence to his actions in that moment, in a way that there hadn't been. And I think if you'd ended on that, and then maybe even only a couple minutes later, that into the horse bit, then again, there's a really nice scene where he goes to knock on her door. He's gone to the ranch, and then he doesn't, and he goes to get the horse instead, because he's like, I think that was such a beautiful moment of acceptance from him, that he would only diminish this woman's life.
Yeah, and he does.
Yeah, and he does.
Well,
and instead we get to see him diminish her life and upset her, because I felt so bad for her, but not in a good way, not in like a like in a like
No, it
meaningful
wasn't.
way.
This movie is working well.
Yeah.
It's more just like, oh man, this is
There's a
this is
bit
bad.
There's a bit where he goes out and he's like, I'm going to go out for a little bit, and you know what he's going to do, and she seems like an idiot for not knowing what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And she just looks up at him and says, "That's okay," and they have a little like moment. They hold each other's hands. Really sweet couple, by the way. I think it worked really well. They had great chemistry.
They had brilliant
But
chemistry.
then, yeah, he just goes out and robs some places, and then there's a title card, and I'm left feeling really empty inside.
Yeah.
It was just shit.
Well, I'd spent so long, you know, in the interim between the first ending and the second ending, just waiting for the film to fucking catch up with itself, so I could then go home and think about how good it had been before that. So, what we've established is all that end stuff you kill, and what you don't kill, you rearrange and you put it before the first ending. You know, you have the discovery about all of his previous breakouts happen beforehand, and because what already exists, someone could probably re-edit this with what actually already exists, because there's a well, no, because that reveal, I'll edit this. That reveal happens in the prison, but the film sets up a situation where she's never entirely sure if he is actually a bank robber, and I think we said it was like he's Schrodinger's bank robber. It might just be a kind of story he's made up to charm her. But then she does find the gun in the glove compartment, and because of that, it's worrying. It becomes real. Then you could have a confrontation about it, and then during that confrontation, you could show all of the times that he broke out of prison before.
You could even have him not be charming. You could be like, "Why were you looking for my glove compartment?" You could have him get quite annoyed and secretive.
Yeah,
I think it would be good to see how he reacts to that, because we never see him like properly tested other than when he gets shot.
No,
like he just kind of breezes through everything. I think it would
like
be,
I don't use it.
It would
never use it.
It would be really nice seeing him have to be questioned by someone he loves or he at least cares for, and have them be like, why do you have this? Why do you do this? And then they could have that conversation, and then that would result in and what happens if you go to prison?
Yeah.
And then maybe he can become a bit more charming, and he does the escape thing, and then she's happy because she knows he's going to be okay, but then he's not okay. Bang! That's a great ending.
Right, here you go. Second option, if you don't want to have that confrontation because you feel it's too cliche, you can really just you can take all of the montage of his previous escapes from prison and put it way earlier in the film when he's just talking about himself.
Yeah.
Or even you don't even have to have a narration lead in. You can just cut back to what's clearly him in prison escaping.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Or he could tell it to the cop. You know, they have a scene where they meet in the bathroom. He'd be like, "I'm gonna get you," and he'd be like, hands him a fucking...
In fact, yeah, that's a great place, because there should have been more of that, because clearly, Casey Affleck made a decision to not just arrest him on the spot. He says, "I know what I'm doing." Never really resolved what he says means that.
"I know what I'm doing," Forrest, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because to begin with, he said it so weirdly, I thought he said, "I know what I'm doing," forced.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what that meant, but okay, he said...
he says Forrest, because he's finally, the penny drops, he's like, "I know who you are, because you always wear the bank robber clothes."
Yeah, because you wear the same clothes to everything, which is fine. Again, he deliberately isn't the most careful at covering up his tracks, but he does make some sparse attempt to do so.
A cursory attempt.
A mustache.
Fake mustache.
The whole gang has fake mustaches.
It could have been him who's wearing a mustache. That man in the fedora and the blueberry suit, who is Robert Redford, is clearly clean shaven.
We're looking for 3 old men with mustaches. They say as all 3 of them walk past the cafe, not with mustaches.
Oh, by the way, one of them's Tom Waits.
Yeah, and the other one's Danny Glover.
You know what there should have been more
3 of the most recognisable men.
What there should have been more of in this film is I really liked that scene early on where he politely robbed a bank in the presence of a cop, Casey Affleck, who was in that bank, and it was all going on so smoothly around him he didn't know it was going on. That was great. This movie did not actually focus enough on the bank robberies that it teased, and at one point it set it up as though you were going to see more of one where they say we're going to hit the truck as well as the vault, and you didn't see it. No, you could have seen it.
Yeah, easily. And it would have been really engaging. It would have been nice. And again, it didn't go right because Danny Glover got shot.
Absolutely.
And that would have been really nice to see. Again, just challenging the characters a bit. It felt like
I've seen it go really well. Yeah. Now I want to see it tilt off a bit.
I see them butter... we see this is supposed to be like their bread and butter. This is supposed to be like what they live for. But we don't see them do it that often.
No.
We don't...
And it was good that time when we did.
Yeah,
so
it was really good.
But, this is a multi-heist movie. I really hate it when there's a movie that involves jailbreaks and bank jobs, and they just skimp on the I can't believe I have to say this, but the reason heists are compelling is because you kind of see the pieces of it moving together.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, they do heists.
Well, it's the clearest...
And then they fucking blow a safe. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, it's like the clearest and purest form of sort of situation, problem, resolution.
Yeah.
Like, and it works so well, and you're so invested. And because they can lay it out beforehand, they're like, this is what we're going to do. Then something goes wrong, such as Danny Glover gets shot for whatever reason.
Yep.
And then you have the resolution. Like, they managed to get their way out of it, presumably because Robert Redford is a master of control. Like,
Yeah.
he's very good at speaking to people. That's, that's how he does this. He doesn't do it via overwhelming physical force.
No.
He just politely asks them in
Yeah.
a really nice way. There's a great scene where there's a girl it's her first day on the job.
That's right.
And he's very nice to her.
She starts to cry, and he's like, well, I don't want you to be crying while this is happening, so he consoles her.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I did like was how he describes casing the joint, and how sometimes that involved just going down and sitting in there for an hour or a day. I was like, what the fuck? Because they show you later, they're just in this bank, and he's sort of like cashing a check, but Tom Waits is just standing on the landing.
Yeah,
And if I worked in a bank, I'd be like, that elderly man, Tom Waits, has been standing there not doing anything in the bank for a while.
Excuse me, sir.
Are you robbing my bank?
Yeah, I would like to know what a bank would do if Robert Redford stays there for a couple of days. Because sometimes he says, like, it will take him, like, a week or something.
Yeah.
And so it'd just be like, excuse me, sir, are you lost?
You keep coming in here. Do you need us to call your children?
Are you homeless? Children, that's another thing. That's we wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
They give him kids, and I get it because he had kids. He actually had multiple kids, if I recall, with multiple women.
Yeah, that's right.
But they don't go into that. He only has one set of kids with one woman in this.
No, in this, yeah, he has one daughter and one son.
Yeah.
And yeah, their introduction, while I kind of would have been okay with it if, again, we just had the first ending, it kind of muddied the water a bit because it paints him as, again, a bit of a vagabond hero, but as you said quite succinctly, the introduction of kids who he has not been in their lives turns him actually into a selfish character, but they don't reconcile this in the theme.
And making him a selfish character, like really doubling down on how selfish he is, would have been great. Like, you could have done it so many points. You do it when he's taking someone hostage to save his life. You could do it when he, when the police get him, and it's sort of like that whole fire scene with Danny Glover's character.
Yeah.
You could even do it, like I said, do it with the kids. Like, make him face up to this. Make the woman find out about the kids. Make I don't actually know what she was called. Was she called June?
Jewel.
That was it. Jewel. Make Jewel find out about the kids and confront him on that one. That would be...
I tell you what it is, because I was about to say they should have gone one way or the other, but just to be clear, it would have been fine if they as you say, painted him at the beginning as this, nice and kind of harmless Robert that everyone likes, and then took you into why his actions had ramifications, but they didn't do that.
No.
They showed him being charming, then they introduced this just ethical wild card that he abandoned his children, and then they kind of carried on with him as this
Just
charming Robert, and it's like...
And it ends on him being charming, essentially. They want you to walk away from that thinking he's charming because he gets caught smiling. That's literally... the last frame of this film is just some text saying that he was smiling. And that's not satisfying.
No.
I don't know what that tells me. I guess it tells me he just really enjoyed it and died having done something he enjoyed. But what does that mean?
Again,
what does it...
Again, had he died mounted on a horse, having not managed to settle down and have a relationship with a woman who loved him, bleeding from the side,
He doesn't even need to die, in my opinion. But I just need the film to end there.
Well, yeah. Just had that been the end, it would have been like, oh man, he did fuck up, and it's not like it was some triumphant thing. It's like, yeah, it would have left you with a lasting thing. You would have put it together in your head for yourself. Yeah. It's like, he was a bit selfish, and he did run away from his kids, and now, he died running, and that was sad. Rather than he died in jail. No,
I agree.
Work.
And again, maybe they were worried that people would be like, but wait, something happened after the horse bit. But it's like, when you leave the cinema, like, when you've experienced that moment, there's no taking that back.
No.
Like, I can learn that he did other stuff, but that doesn't mean that the horse ending is any less valid. Like, he still could have got caught on the horse and then gone into prison and out of prison again once more. I don't really care about that, because an 80-year-old man going to prison, it would be... I'm just trying to think of an example. It would be like, it's just showing something that doesn't need to... It's fleshing out too much. Like, it's showing something that doesn't need to occur. It didn't need to occur, and it detracted from the piece. Like, it's like repeat... Yeah, again, not sorry to keep quoting adages, but...
That's fine.
There's this thing where it's called, like, 1 + 1 = 1/2, and it's the idea that if you repeat something twice, then it has less impact than if you've just done it once.
Yeah.
And that's the two endings here.
No, absolutely.
Fucked it.
It catched it. So this, I first had this problem acutely with Django Unchained. Up until that point, despite the fact I'd seen loads of movies, I'd never had this specific problem before, where a movie built up loads of momentum, and then it's like a check. Like, it cashed that check.
Mm-hmm.
There was a massive blowout of violence. It was awesome, and then it carried on for ages, and then came back round the circle to have a similar but less impactful ending, where it should have just been re-edited down into this one explosion of suspense. Now, in this, it wasn't so much suspenseful, but everything came to a head and was summarised excellently, really well, in a way that, as I said earlier, I had problems with the film, and I was ready to basically forgive them.
Yep.
But then it carried on, and there had been, for me, an outpouring of emotion. It was cathartic, and then they're just like, well, we're going to do that again in 10 or 15 minutes, so we'll
Stay
see you again
tuned.
then. Yeah, stay tuned. It's like, fuck off, man.
No, I agree. I was done. It had lost me, or it hadn't even lost me. It had completed itself.
Yes.
And then I was just watching an unrelated 15-minute film about and it was essentially unrelated because it was just because like from there it's just a story about someone who gets out of prison and then robs another bank.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even have any. I wouldn't actually deem it to have as any connection to the main thrust of it, which was about his time in the Over the Hill gang.
It also served to highlight the problems with Casey Affleck's character because he contacts him.
He comes back and I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't have been doing that.
He's like, "Why are you phoning this guy? Don't you have you phone Tom Waits?
This is not Catch Me If You Can.
Phone anyone? Yeah, exactly. There's not. You guys aren't.
Phone Danny Glover and forgive him.
Yeah, exactly.
Say I always go back in.
Yeah, exactly. Just say it happens. It is, what's the word? What's it like?
Forget a Jake?
No, a professional. What's the term when it's like?
Go on, we'll get those.
Hazards of the job. What's the professional hazards?
Yeah.
There's a term.
Occupational hazards.
Occupational hazards. Thank you. You just ring up, say occupational hazards. They have a little laugh. They hang up. That would be infinitely more impactful.
It would I still wouldn't have liked this continuation, but it would have salvaged it.
Yeah, but if you
bland.
If you include John Hunt, you're just like, oh wow, I just really didn't give a shit about him for this film.
Yeah.
This film that's now over.
I mean, I'm gonna get to a point where we summarise.
Yeah, we should probably close this off because otherwise we're just gonna bitch.
Okay, no, I think we've done okay. The problem I have with this film is it could have been great. It was just good. But I'd give it a 6 out of 10 or like a 3 out of 5 because it really just crippled itself through intermittent incompetence. And, you'll never get a shot like this again. Robert Redford was bowing out. I also think he deserved a bit... We've mentioned some of the... So there's the bigger problems we have, but we mentioned earlier some of the problems with it that were so obvious that it was beneath Lowry to, write such a shit piece of dialogue.
Yep.
Or have such an on-the-nose bit of...
It's like he didn't care about the bits that didn't have Robert Redford in them.
Yeah.
Which is weird. Because it's... Again, it's putting too much in your star player. Like it's a team effort. You can't, there are 5 players in basketball. You can't just put everything on one person.
Yeah.
And he did hold it up, and I would say that the Robert Redford bits are easily like 8 out of 10, pushing higher. But yeah, the whole film comes out at about a 5 for me, just because it's attached to a really terrible.
I haven't seen something. No, I'm completely agreeing with you. I haven't seen something drag itself down in this way. I can't think of a parallel example.
No.
It was just really annoying. We anticipated this just greatly. I mean, I've seen this trailer loads of times. I was immediately sold. I loved the way it looked. I loved the song. I like Jackson C. Frank.
Just the way it felt, almost like it had a.
We had to convince other people to go see it with us,
Yep.
and then they ended up leaving having enjoyed it more than us, and it was clear, and we had to just sort of hold on to this fucking disappointment. Again, oh god, I don't hate it.
It's such a that's the thing. It's such a tinged disappointment because I got the film I wanted, but I got it for like 47 minutes. Like, I in there I could cut, and maybe like you said, maybe someone will edit this, or maybe we should give it a go once the DVD's out. Like, you could edit the film that I would enjoy, and it would be about 50 minutes long. It would be pretty great. But
by the way, as well, like with the eventual chase and the horseback scene, so our friend reminded us afterwards that as you said, that was around like the 50-55 minute mark, and you can't end a movie at that time. What I do quite like about David Lowery is I really enjoy his pacing, and I didn't realise that it had been such a short period. I felt like I'd watched a full movie.
Same.
It's another thing I really liked about Ghost Story.
Perfect
length, always something happening.
Mm-hmm.
This is... Oh, and, it may be a good time to get into this. I don't know if you were going to say a point there, but it's notable that Lowry did not edit this film. This is one of the... I don't think he edited Pete's Dragon, but he edited A Ghost Story. He did not edit this, and he did edit Ain't Them Bodies Saints.
Do we know... Well, you... I say we, sorry. You looked into who had edited it, and they'd done some really weird stuff.
Yeah, it was just a weird career editor who clearly had no passion for film.
Yeah, I feel... I'm trying to... They'd done The Ugly Truth, which is sort of like the most soulless film I've ever seen, and I'm ashamed to this day that I've seen it. But yeah, I would love to see... Because he must have signed off on... Obviously, he signed off on this. There was no way that he didn't. And so I don't know if just...
He said that there was an actor who was in the trailer who... it was something Carradine, and I don't know if it was relation to David Carradine, but he has made a statement saying that all of his footage was cut except for one line. It will be included on the DVD. The director's commentary, or rather the director's cut version, clearly that's going to be released.
Oh, is it? Okay,
or just deleted scenes. I'm watching all of them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I want to know what the fucking vision was.
Yeah, same. Because that's what I guess that's what I was failing to say just then. Is I feel that the film we saw, I can't believe it was what was intended. And I'm not trying to be like a Russian peasant where I'm like, oh, the Tsar had the best interests and his vision was distorted by those around him. Like, I do believe this is probably on some part a failure of Lowry, because some of those scenes were just bad. Like, there was placeholder dialogue, there were placeholder characters. But I just feel like...
context would have exonerated it.
I feel like maybe it was, like, shot in a better... there must have been something that made it flow in his mind better. Because, like you said, he's not bad at pacing at all, and this film, even at points, shows it, but... Yeah, I guess maybe it really does show that a film is like made or broken in the edits, and on the editing floor as much as when it's shot. Yeah, just a bit disappointing, I guess, would be my closing statements. Would you recommend people go see it? No, would you not? Sure.
The only thing that would make me recommend people see this actually is just because it's an original film, technically.
Yeah,
obviously, parts of it, one half of the story, the cop part, is tropey as fuck. But the other part is original, and I get it's based off, the real man, but it's not a superhero film. That's why I'd recommend people go see it. But I have spent the last 24 hours thereabouts with you trying to see if I could win myself around to liking it more, because I want to like it really badly.
Yep.
But I think the record shows that I'd watch most of it again.
That's the thing. I see. I'm going to go on the other side and be more optimistic. I'm going to say that you should watch it. You maybe shouldn't watch it in the cinema, but you should watch it because I think you're going to walk away, like we did, with a feeling that's worth it. Like there is certainly an indescribable, and like I said, sort of like nostalgia for a time you never knew. I think very few films evoke that in me, and I think it's worth it for that alone. But barely. Like, it's a real, like, Faustian bargain. Like, you got to trade peace of mind for a nice feeling.
I'll say one last thing, which I've basically said loads of times. Redford, bleeding, with his hat, on horseback, Blues Run the Game playing in the background while all the police arrive. That moment is going to live in my memory forever as just being, like, one of the weirdest... I mean, I loved it, but it can't exist without the context of the film that surrounds it, and what follows ruined it for me.
Well, the thing is, it would have been one of the best endings I've seen all year, maybe like ever. Yeah. And as it's not anymore because it wasn't the end of the film.
No,
and that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that does suck. It's like I can't even think of a. Jesus Christ, it's like you fed me like a really good meal, like a delicious meal, but then you made me eat like shit for 20 minutes afterwards.
You're never going to remember that meal.
No,
because it'll always be the time you had to eat shit for 20 minutes.
It's just like, oh man, no one had ever cooked me a better steak. It was the best steak in the world. Why did you make me eat shit afterwards?
Yeah, I can barely tell you what that steak tastes like anymore.
Fucking naked Aaron covered in pages of the script, cooking me a steak and making me eat shit.
There would be ink everywhere. Yeah, I mean, I guess, there's one see it, one don't. And I guess that's it for Robert Redford. What a bum note to end on.
Yeah, fuck, man. The reason I think it's okay that we say these things about this film, I know it sounds like a weird thing to say, but it has been quite well received, and I think too well received. I think people really, with general like film reviews, especially in the broadsheet newspapers, people get an idea in their head about how much they're going to like it, and then it nods round in a giant like bongo circle of people saying maybe not exactly the same things, but
the same
vocalizing the same platitudes and memes about it's a beautiful, wistful send off to him. all of this.
You get like the stock, and again, like the studio almost circulates these sort of things.
Yeah.
They're sort of like, oh, it's a beautiful send off to Robert Redford.
And they eat them up, and they put them in their reviews that are supposedly their own opinions.
Well,
it's fucking ridiculous.
It's easier to come up with themes that you've been, or it's easier to say themes you've been told than come up with your own. Like
that's right.
It's so much easier if someone tells you it's like a wistful time for not timeless, but sort of like time-centric story.
That's right. You've been suggested into it,
and you're like, oh yeah, that'd be really easy to write about. That'd be great. That would save me having to actually think.
Yeah. Whereas what they never, what they haven't sort of hypnotized all the critics into saying is what was clearly supposed to be the point of Affleck's character, and that's why I'm pleased that we got to discuss it, because he was supposed to be someone who was dissatisfied in some way and resented the fact that these bank robbers were in his situation but worse and really balling with it. It just didn't come together. Yeah,
and again, it's such a rich, fertile ground. Like the idea of a younger man being jealous of a bunch of like old criminals, and the idea that he's a family man, he should have everything, and he's just not. Like that's great. That's a really great theme. You could write something great around that.
And then his pursuit and eventual abstinence from arresting them is what led him to realise that he loved his life with his family.
Which again, completely unearned.
It was just a job. Yeah.
A shame. On to the next.
Yeah. Great. What a year. Bye-bye now.
Bye.